Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome in truly across the continent today for another exciting Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants broadcast. If you're joining us for the first time, like our speaker and a whole bunch of our classes are today, then we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. Now, everything we do goes to our YouTube channel, so if you want to watch this in 3 weeks or 3 years, you can absolutely head there and do just that. I especially encourage you to do so because this is part of our epic Wild Hope series. We've been partnering with the amazing folks at HHMI's Tangled Bank Studios to feature some really incredible, positive, hopeful stories of conservation. Conservation is a very challenging field. There could be a lot of setbacks, but there are so many people doing such great work to save habitats and species around the world. So do check out that series. We've got 4 more broadcasts in it before the year wraps. And if you want to check out wildhope.tv, there's lots more to explore and discover there. Now, before I welcome in our speaker and our topic du jour, I want to note we do have a Kahoot today. So if you want to join us with a little 4-question quiz between our talk and our Q&A, have some engagement, keep the excitement going, pull that game pin up, and in about 25 minutes, we'll be doing that in advance of our questions. Now, I'm so excited today because we are welcoming in Kristy Bly, and she is the Black-Footed Ferret Restoration Manager at the World Wildlife Fund. You all know the World Wildlife Fund. It's probably the most well-known conservation organization in the world, and it's one of the first times we've ever had the chance to have one of their amazing experts on our broadcast. So it's a real privilege to have her just for that. And black-footed ferrets are such a charismatic and amazing species and conservation story in and of themselves. So I hope you're as excited as I am. Let's buckle up together. I'm going to turn you over to Kristy. And Kristy, welcome to the broadcast. So nice to have you today. This is lovely.
It is so fun to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
My absolute pleasure. Now, I know you've got a lot to share with us, so if you want to dive right in, I can zip my lip finally and let you get underway with the presentation if you want to pull that up, and we'll go on an exploration together.
That sounds great.
Amazing. I want to note too, while she's doing that, we're going to be highlighting a few other great ways to keep learning going on black-footed ferrets when you're done, including blackfootedferret.org, World Wildlife's website. So please stay tuned for an email at the end. We'll make sure you have all those resources when we are done the broadcast. It wants to work. It's thinking about it. While you're doing that too, I'll just welcome in Miss Adams, who just joined us in the background, plus our YouTube audience. YouTubers, if you want to chime in and let us know where you're joining from, we'd love to hear from you as well. I know that's the way you come in for a test and it all works perfectly, and then we go to go live. Something should go wrong in every video broadcast. Otherwise, it's no fun. It's actually been my raison d'etre for 7 years now. We're almost full screen with this. So if you want to just cue that up, and then I'll bring it up for everyone, and we will dive in.
I have it up on my screen. Do you see it on yours?
I do, but it's not full screen. I still have your entire slide deck to the left, so I want to make sure we're not spoiling anything for kids. So if you share it, entire screen tends to work best for that.
Okay, let me just go back one more time here. Thanks for your patience.
Oh yeah, no hurry at all. Kristy, while you're pulling that up, I'll just put you in the background for a really quick second. And again, I will bring up our game pin. I'm going to put this in the StreamYard chat for everyone and the YouTube chat. So if you want to get this up as a little separate tab, lots of opportunity in just a little bit. And of course, we're looking forward to all your questions. I think everyone's tech is working really well today for our classroom. So please do get ready for that. I think we might have got it.
I think we got it here. Hang on one second. Okay, we should be good to go.
We're good. If you want to drag that little banner on the bottom that says StreamYard is sharing your screen off the screen, then we will be cooking with gas. Perfect. Kristy, take us away.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I am really excited to be here today to talk with you all about my work with World Wildlife Fund, where our vision is to build a future in which people live in harmony with nature. And what's the trick on slide advancing, Jesse?
It should just be the sort of arrow icon on the bottom. You might be able to do it that way. And there's a little in the bottom.
Right.
Yep, there you go.
Okay, gotcha. Great. As we roll on, thank you. So I am Kristy Bly with the World Wildlife Fund. I am the manager of our Black-Footed Ferret program, and I live in Montana. And today I am going to be sharing the story of the masked bandit of the prairie, the black-footed ferret, how they almost went extinct, and what we are doing to save them. And I would love to know at some point in time today how many of you already know about black-footed ferrets or have heard from them. So you'll have to tell me later. So let's jump right in. Once found throughout the entire Great Plains and Intermountain West, black-footed ferrets are one of North America's most endangered mammals. They are the only species native to North America, because some of you may have heard of domestic ferrets. And they are a medium-sized mustelid, which is a member of the weasel family, and they weigh almost 2 pounds or so, 2 to 2.5. They measure 19 to 24 inches in length, including a 5 to 6 inch tail. So they were designed to navigate through prairie dog burrows. So they're long and slender. They've got black feet and a black mask, which is why we call them the masked bandits of the prairie, and a black tipped tail. Most importantly, they are nocturnal, which means they are only active at night. So ferrets are a specialized predator of prairie dogs, meaning they mostly eat prairie dogs and depend on prairie dog burrows for shelter and raising young. Consequently, their survival is tied to that of prairie dogs. Historically, we found ferrets from Canada to Mexico, Rocky Mountain front to the Missouri River, and a couple of areas west of there in the white-tailed prairie dog and Gunnison's prairie dog range. We mostly find them in this green area here that you see in the black-tailed prairie dog range, but there are a few populations in white-tailed and Gunnison's areas. And we think 100 years ago or so, there were probably about 500,000 black-footed ferrets on Earth. But today, they have seen there are more declines. Black-footed ferrets are no longer that prevalent. So there are several reasons for their decline. One was large-scale poisoning programs, because there were concerns about prairie dogs eating grass for cows that were brought into North America. And then much of their habitat was plowed under to create row crop agriculture. And then finally, a non-native disease called sylvatic plague really impacted their populations. So with all of these combined causes of demise, we really thought that ferrets were endangered at one point in time. So basically by 1974, we didn't think there were any ferrets left in the wild because of the 3 Ps: poison, plague, and plow up. So we were really thought that they were gone for good. But in the early 80s, there was a really cool dog. His name was Shep. He lived on a ranch in Wyoming, and he brought a ferret to his owners. And they didn't know what it was at the time, but there had been some signs that says, hey, look out for this endangered species. We're wondering if there are any left. And so the owners brought this ferret to a taxidermist, and the taxidermist said, oh my goodness, this is a black-footed ferret. So this launched this huge search campaign by biologists that all came to this ranch to look at this last remaining population of black-footed ferrets. They were so endangered that there were only about 120 left. And then plague started to come into this population. And plague is a disease spread by fleas that is lethal to both ferrets and their prairie dog prey. And so when plague hit this system, efforts were made to stop it, but they were unsuccessful. So biologists caught 24 of these animals to bring them into captivity. And that was a good thing, because after they did that, the wild population died, and there were definitely no ferrets in the wild after that. So of the 24 that were caught, only 18 survived, and only 7 of those actually contributed into the captive breeding system. So this first time around, when we thought that ferrets had gone extinct, there was an effort to bring them into captivity, but those weren't successful. But this time around, captive breeding was successful, ever so thankfully, and so successful enough that they were able to get reintroduced in the wild. But as we know, if you raise an animal in captivity, it doesn't necessarily have the skills it needs to be able to kill prairie dogs in the wild. So we started a boot camp program for ferrets. It's called preconditioning. And this is where a mother and her kits are put into an outdoor secured pen area. And each kit has to learn how to kill prairie dogs before they can successfully be reintroduced into the wild. And so that was very successful as well. There were enough animals that were born in captivity to be able to be released into the wild by 1991. So that first reintroduction occurred in Wyoming, close to where that last population was found. Since then, there's been 34 places where ferrets have been established. Unfortunately, only about 41% of those are alive today, meaning those sites that once introduced ferrets don't all have ferrets still. And the same thing is kind of similar to what happened before, is that sylvatic plague, it's a very deadly disease. It is hard to manage. And some of the prairie dog colonies aren't as big as they once used to be. You know, there were 500,000 ferrets in the wild, and now there are far fewer. So there are fewer than 400 in the wild today. And it's hard because there's not as much habitat. I'll talk about challenges moving forward. And we have about 300 in captivity today as well. And that is great, but it's a long road to get to the recovery of the ferrets that are needed, which is 3,000 breeding adult ferrets in the wild in about 30 or more places. And we hope to have at least 30 adult ferrets in each. And so while we're pretty far short of that, we're hopeful that we can get there. And so today, we are still looking at a lack of prairie dog habitat. There's still plow up of the prairie happening. There's still an intolerance of prairie dogs on the landscape by people that raise livestock. And sylvatic plague is the #1 threat to ferrets today. Again, it's a bacterial disease that fleas carry. And when fleas land on ferrets or prairie dogs, they die. We also don't have a lot of money to restore this species. And I'll talk about why it costs money to manage them. So in order to achieve recovery, we need to monitor their populations. We need to protect both prairie dogs and ferrets from plague. And we need to find better tools of finding ferrets at night because they are so elusive. They live underground and they are active only at night. And because there are only 7 genetic founders, we would like to be able to enhance their genetic diversity. So we start every year by protecting prairie dogs from plague. And we do this by going out into the field, and we have several tools that we use. One is this dust insecticide that we put down into prairie dog burrows, and fleas go through the burrows and get coated with this dust and die. We mark the top of the burrow to see that we've been that burrow has been marked. We also have tools like fipronil grain, which is this red product here you see, where prairie dogs consume this bait, and it protects them from fleas that land on them. Any flea that lands on them dies if a prairie dog consumes this grain. And we've also developed these really fun baits that are flavored with peanut butter. Prairie dogs love peanut butter. And we then lace them with an active ingredient that kills fleas. And so these baits can be distributed by drone or by all-terrain vehicle, and we spread them across thousands of acres of prairie dogs. And so then when the bait gets on a prairie dog hole, they consume it and they are protected from plague for about a year. So that helps to keep the ferret or the prairie dog population alive. And so once we've protected prairie dogs from plague, then we do the same for ferrets, which, as I mentioned earlier, is trickier because they are nocturnal. So it means we need to go out and look for these guys at night. And we do this using spotlights mounted to the roof of a truck to search for their notorious green eye shine. They have this cool colored eyes, these cool colored eyes that are different from any other animals at night. Other animals, their eyes are typically yellow, but these are really cool emerald green. But if you can imagine, this is a daytime picture of a prairie dog colony, and all these burrows are prairie dog burrows. And you can even see a couple prairie dogs sitting up on these. If you can imagine being, looking out at this landscape at night at all these little burrows, and you have to hope you can see some little green eye shine coming out of here. It's like looking for a needle in a haystack, or if you were to lose your earbuds in a football field with tall grass when it's dark out. It's really difficult. So we've been looking for solutions to find ferrets more efficiently. And we've been testing thermal cameras mounted to towers like this. So thermal cameras actually detect the heat signature of an animal versus just the eye shine. So with the spotlights, we hope that that spotlight will shine at the same time that the ferret is facing you, whereas the thermal cameras, it can detect the entire body of an animal. So we don't have to wait for the ferret to turn around and look at us. So we've been looking at the tower, which scans an area, but then we've also been using a drone to look for ferrets using thermal cameras. And you will see here, all these little dots are prairie dog burrows, and the heat coming out of them turns it white. But then, as you can see here, you've got this long slinky-sized animal, which is a black-footed ferret, running across between burrow to burrow. So thermal cameras are very impactful and very effective at finding ferrets that we miss by spotlights. And in some cases, we can send spotlight trucks with their crew members to drive out to where the drone is flying, and the drone can take them directly to it. So it's been an exciting technology that's really helping us look for ferrets. And it's really important for us to count ferrets each year so we know how many animals are at a site that gets us to that 3,000 number. And the other reason we need to find ferrets is what I'll tell you next. So let's stop this and go again. Great. So once we find a ferret, either through a spotlight or one of the cameras, the next steps are tracking that ferret to the burrow that it's in. And so we have a clipboard, and we've got a GPS unit, and we have an ID reader, and we've got a trap in addition to a reflector. So once we find the burrow that the ferret is in, we put this trap in. We put this reader around the entrance because most ferrets have a microchip like dogs and cats do. And so when it goes through the ring, it goes up into this trap like an extension of the burrow. And we can see whether it's been marked before or whether it still needs to have a new chip or to be protected from plague. And so we also collect a GPS location of the burrow it's in. The reflector helps us come back to this ferret. So we'll set this trap, we'll leave it for a couple of hours and come back to see if we've caught it. And once we do, we take the ferret, check the ID. If it doesn't have vaccination or ID, we, take it to this portable hospital trailer where we then vaccinate ferrets against sylvatic plague and canine distemper. We check it for health. We also give it a little bit of flea medicine, and then we give it a microchip if it doesn't have one. So then once the animal wakes up, we release it back to the burrow where we found it in. And this is a short video of this process.
The black-footed ferret is one of the most endangered mammals in North America, and there are only about 390 in the wild today. Black-footed ferrets are not only biologically important, but culturally important to the tribes of Fort Belknap, and bringing this animal back is like bringing a relative home for them. It's an incredible honor to be working with the tribes of Fort Belknap to return this endangered species to the prairie. It's very special because it hosts one of 14 ferret populations in North America, and it is the first Native Nation-led ferret population. So here, this animal relative holds high significance to them.
When I was out here firsthand kind of experiencing it, just realizing how delicate they are and how dependent they are on us and organizations like this. And they mean bringing back the vitality of my land and my tribal land and my tribal animals that we have here. It felt really close to my heart, and it's really rewarding for me.
The primary threat to the black-footed ferret is a non-native disease called sylvatic plague. And in order for us to establish and maintain populations of this endangered species, it's important for us to vaccinate them against this deadly disease. We live trap them from their burrows. We transport them to a portable hospital trailer where we vaccinate them against this deadly disease, and then we return them to the wild. we must look for them at night because they are nocturnal species. We do that by setting roof-mounted spotlights on our trucks. And while spotlighting is effective, we need to rely on line of sight to see that ferret. And we also need that ferret to be looking directly at us for us to pick up its eye shine. In search of solutions, we are also testing thermal cameras mounted to towers and drones to help detect the heat signature of the ferret. We're really hoping this tool can be used to help crews on the ground narrow the areas to focus. So instead of having to look through 100,000 acres, maybe they only need to look at 20,000 acres or 2,000 acres. And we're thinking that FLIR cameras can help us better improve technology at those sites and streamline the crew's ability to find ferrets, live trap them, and protect them. And what's exciting is that the ferrets that we're trapping are looking very healthy. So we've got good reproduction into the system this year, and the recovery goals for this species call for 3,000 in the wild. So while the road is long, we are hopeful.
Great. So that is a little bit of a glimpse of how we are working at one site. It was, as you heard, it was called Fort Belknap. It's a Native Nation reservation up in north central Montana, and one of my favorite places to work. And so while we are working to increase detection and protection of this endangered species, we also, as I mentioned earlier, are hoping that we can grow the genetic diversity of those 7 founders. So we did that most recently. You may have heard that there have been the first ever endangered species clones. And so what was really amazing and really cool was back in Wyoming in the 1980s, there were scientists who were studying ferrets because we didn't really know much about them, like how they live, what they eat, how often do they eat, where do they go every night? How many litters do they have a year? How many babies do they have in each litter? And so at that time, they also were developing tools for collaring black-footed ferrets so they could track them. And in one of those trap sessions, scientists saved some cells of those original, 100 or so animals that were at that site in Wyoming. And they put them into a frozen zoo. And now, fast forward into today's world, we have all this technology where we were able to take those cells from a female ferret, her name was Willa, and we were able to clone her. And those clones were raised in a domestic ferret mom, and then once they were weaned, were put into the black-footed ferret captive breeding facility. And so the first clone was named Elizabeth Ann. It was very, very successful. The bummer is that Elizabeth Ann had some reproductive health challenges, so she is not able to produce any young. However, 2 new clones have been born this year. Their names are Noreen and Antonia, and we are hoping that they will breed and that their offspring will eventually contribute genetic material into the black-footed ferret population, and provide that robustness that enables ferrets to be more resilient to living in the wild, to fending off plague, and to surviving into the future. We've been pretty lucky. I don't know if you've heard about genetic bottlenecks, but with only 7 animals in the founder population, things can get weird, like crooked tails or crooked sperm. And so this 8th founder could be life-changing to add an immense amount of genetic diversity into the population and help us move ferret recovery forward. And so as you've seen here today, there have been many, many innovative tools that we have used to advance recovery of this rare species. And all of these combined have been really critical to helping us get where we are today. So from captive breeding to preconditioning to reintroduction to improving detection and protection techniques to cloning. This has been a phenomenal effort to restore this wild species in the middle of nowhere. And you may wonder, like, why are we spending so much time? What is the purpose behind recovering black-footed ferrets? And I would really love to hear from each of you about what that looks like to you. But in the meantime, I think it would be helpful for me to share what I think. First of all, black-footed ferrets are endemic to the Great Plains. You know, they have an important role as a predator in this landscape and within the food web, which hopefully some of you have heard about what those are. They have an inherent value as an animal in nature, in our own backyard. They are culturally valuable to Native nations, as we heard earlier. And I think in general, wildlife and wild lands are very important to our human health and well-being. And in the Great Plains, that's where a lot of our food and fresh water comes from. The reason that ferrets are gone is largely human caused. Plague was introduced to North America. We plowed up their habitat and we poisoned their prey. So we have an obligation to return this species where it's desired. And finally, like, I think we should recover black-footed ferrets because look how cool these guys are. You should really see them out in the wild too. They're really, really fun to watch. And so while we do know that the road to recovery is long, I have a lot of hope that we are getting there. We've already made great strides. The technology is getting us there. But what matters is all of you. You are the next generation of caretakers of our planet, of the animals that rely on this planet and call it home. And so I hope that you can help me help black-footed ferrets have a future here in North America forever and ever and ever. And so what can you do? Well, come help me. Get a degree in wildlife biology. Come get an internship with World Wildlife Fund. You can learn more about our work through a website that I will post on the next page. There's also a donation button there if any of you want to help fundraise for black-footed ferrets. You can also tell your friends and family about this really cool animal and why it matters to save spaces for them in the wild. You can also learn about wildlife in your own backyard. You know, maybe it's not ferrets for you, maybe it's something else. And you can work on restoring what's in your own backyard. And I think it's also really good to be thinking about our impact on planet Earth. You know, can you turn your lights off? Can you use less water? Can you walk or bike instead of drive? All of these actions matter and enable us to keep a space for wildlife in wild places. So thank you very much. Here are a couple of websites that you can go to. This blackfootedferret.org is one of the best websites. You can learn anything you ever want to know about black-footed ferrets and more. Of course, you can reach out to me directly. And with that, I am really looking forward to chatting with all of you.
Oh, Kristy, well, we're looking forward to chatting with you too. That was extraordinary. Thank you so much for such an incredible deep dive into your work, seeing what a charismatic creature the black-footed ferret is. And you also achieved video call bingo by having a dog appear in the broadcast. So thank you for that too. That is one of the great joys of all video calls in the last 7 years I've been doing this. Before we dive in with our Q&A, we're going to do our Kahoot together. We're going to test some understanding. We're going to have a little bit of fun. So Kristy, if you want to join us by giving us hints when there's a few seconds to spare for each of these questions, you are more than welcome to. And what the kids win for this is our everlasting respect. And if you're new to Kahoot, the faster you answer, the more points you get. So get those trigger fingers at the ready for any questions. And if you don't want to play along online, but you just want to yell out the answers, that's totally fine as well. I'm going to give you a quick second to do that. And I want to note, I will be giving all those links to classes at the end as well. So if you want to check out blackfootedferret.org, worldwildlife.org, again, our Wild Hope TV thing to check out this broadcast when it comes out on their channel, lots of ways to get involved. But Kristy, without further ado, I'm going to stop talking and kick us off with this before we dive in with our Q&A. Let's get started, everybody. All right. Question 1. Stevenson Elementary, by the way, will be coming to you first for questions when we do our Q&A, just so you're at the ready. Everyone can flick on their mics. Black-footed ferrets are the most endangered mammal in North America. True or false? What do we think? We did highlight their population in the middle of this broadcast. It's pretty low. It's an animal that requires a lot of care and a lot of help, and this is something that we did feature and talk about quite a bit. I want to note too, Kristy, I've literally never heard of something where you're feeding things and it will then kill fleas that land on them. That is very cool for me. That's completely novel conservation approach in my entire career of doing this. That's awesome.
It's pretty cool.
Let's see. Most of you got this right. Let's see. Soaring Bear takes the lead. I hope a ferret name wins this. That has happened like twice. The name of the creature.
Cool.
All right. The ferret's favorite food are hot dogs, prairie dogs, insects, or squirrels. We talked about this. They're specialist predators. I feel sometimes like I'm a specialist predator of hot dogs, but that's just me. So for our kids, let's see. Get those answers in. 3 more seconds. Drum roll, please. Most of you have it in. It is prairie dogs. Yes, most of you got that. There you go. I will note for anyone who's ever been to the plains, I've been in the Canadian plains, there are a bazillion insects. You'd think that would be a good option for them, but no, they're only
They sometimes eat mice and rabbits.
Do they?
Yeah.
All the hoppers. All right, about how many ferrets are needed to restore the population? Is it 30, 300, 3,000, or 30,000? I'm just giving you multiples of 10, just to really like mess you up. What do we think? 5 seconds left. Get those answers in. Ooh, 1 more second. All right, 16 answers in. Yes, 3,000. Way to go. So we're at about, Kristy's 386, if I recall correctly. 300 something. We've got a ways to go, but our classes are on the ball. Epic Ant has our lead. No ferrets in sight in the leaderboard as we go to our final question. And then Stevenson Elementary, we are coming to you. What are some examples of some cool tech used for ferret conservation? Drone photography, thermal imagery, biotech and cloning, or quantum lasers, which may be a dummy answer that I've just always wanted to put in one of these. Probably not even a real thing. It's more than one answer, so pick whatever fits. Ms. Avila's class, I know you guys have to go in a minute too, so thank you for sticking around. I will come to you actually first for a question just because you do have to go. So the first 3 answers are correct. That's fantastic. Let's see what that does to our leaderboard, and we'll head to Claude Pepper if they've got a few seconds left before they have to go. Then we'll head to Stevenson Elementary. Winged Gazelle in third. Awesome Macaw in second. And first, for all the marbles, drum roll, please, is Epic Ant. Way to go, guys. Thank you so much for playing along. That's awesome, everybody. And we're going to head to Miss Avila's class if we can get them just before their day wraps up. Hello, guys. Welcome in Miami. Hi. If you want to flick on your mic, you can take a question. It's up to you. Hello, hello. Hi. I know. I'm excited too. Where's Miss Avila? We want to get a question if we can. Maybe we'll come back. We'll see if you guys are still sticking around. Stevenson Elementary, I'm going to head to you guys. If you want to come on in, unmute your microphone, and you are good to go. Hey, guys.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello. Hi. Can you hear us?
Yeah, you're perfect.
Okay. So you guys have a question?
How did you find? Wait, never mind. You already told me.
Why don't you move on to someone else? I think we need to come up with something.
Okay, that's okay, guys. Miss Adams' class, we're going to head to you guys live. YouTubers, feel free to chime in the chat, too. We'd love to hear from you. Lots of opportunity for questions. Everyone can unmute your microphones, I promise. On StreamYard, you're in the background until I want you to be live. Hello, Miss Adams' group. Virginia, hello. Yes, you are on camera. The kids see it. That's good. Come unmute your mic if you want questions. This is a troublesome Q&A today. We want to get you guys the questions. Well, we're going to head to YouTube. Live classes. Come on in. Unmute your microphones. Come share questions. We'd love to hear from you. Kristy, what is the biggest challenge in helping protect these ferrets? You talked about a few of these throughout the course of the broadcast. Is there any sort of chief thing that is really tricky as a conservationist?
Well, certainly managing plague. So you can't see plague. It's a bacteria carried by fleas, and those little fleas land on prairie dogs or they land on black-footed ferrets. And so the only way that we can manage plague is to manage flea populations. And it's expensive. We are hoping, though, through the baits, that when those prairie dogs consume them, they are protected from plague. Any fleas that land on them die. So we are hoping that through plague bait development and distribution, it's going to be a lot less expensive. So plague is hard to find and it's expensive to treat. So that's definitely the biggest challenge. If we didn't have plague in the system, we would probably be already halfway through to ferret recovery goals at this point in time.
Plague is not something that you hear about every day in conservation. It's a fairly, I don't know what other group of species actually has this as an issue. So it is a real challenge. And I'm glad we highlighted that today, Kristy. Let's head to our live classes. It looks like everyone's at the camera now. So great. Unmute your mic, everybody. You're not audible till I bring you in, I promise. So Miss Adams' class, come on in. Take us away. Hey, guys.
How does cloning work?
That is such a tough question. It's magic is what I like to say. So, you have frozen cells from Willa, who died in 1980s, 1988, I think she was dead. And so there's a careful process where you have to thaw out that cell, create an embryo, and then it gets implanted into a domestic ferret female, and she raises it as her own. So usually there's a litter, and some of those animals survive and some of those don't. Reviveandrestore.org probably has a good description of the really technical details about how that implantation of that clone cell works. But it's exciting and amazing. And once the black-footed ferret raised in the domestic ferret is born, it stays with that domestic mom for a handful of days until it's weaned. Actually, it's longer than a handful of days, but then it is raised with other black-footed ferrets eventually, we hope.
Yeah, it is such a cool science. It's not something that we get a chance to talk about very often, and fairly new. The first cloned animal is not that far back. For you kids, it seems like an eternity ago, but in reality, it's in the last 2 decades that we've had the capacity of doing this at all. So it's really exciting science.
It's huge.
Yeah.
Can you imagine being that scientist that many years ago? I mean, some of you probably weren't even born in the 1980s, right? And having that foresight to think, oh, we might need to keep these cells for some reason someday. Yeah,
Very
pretty
cool.
amazing.
Stevenson Elementary, we're going to head to you. If you want to unmute your mic, Ms. Avila will come to you right after, guys. Come on in. Hey, folks. And a note for all our teachers, do just keep your mics unmuted for the rest of the time. It'll make it way easier in Q&A. You're good to go.
All right. So how can we help restore their where they live?
Great question. You can come help. We always are looking for volunteers and interns to help us with monitoring prairie dogs. We map the extent of their colonies, and we count how many prairie dogs per acre there are. And we always need eyes in the ground to look for ferrets. You can help by spreading the word that prairie dogs have a place on the planet and not all of them are bad. There is a lot of concern for animals. So prairie dogs eat grass and cows eat grass. And so there's a lot of worry that some people have about cows and prairie dogs living together, which they do just fine. Actually, for millennia, bison and prairie dogs evolved together and they depend on one another for survival. And now that we have fences where cows and prairie dogs eat the same grass, it's harder, right? So having the ability to find tools that enable landowners trying to make a living raising cattle with prairie dogs makes a big difference. So you can help with coexistence tools. That would also be a super fun one.
It's something that we cover in a lot of our programs. And when I was a student, back when I was in grade 11, so 17 years old, I was in Toronto, and there was an opportunity to go down to Montana and help with black-footed ferret restoration. So I didn't take up that opportunity. It's one of my only regrets in life, truly.
You can come anytime.
I'll have to come by and see you, Kristy.
Come anytime. Take you out.
Let's head to Florida. Ms. Avila's class, come on in. Hey.
Okay, Lucas, go ahead.
Like, what do they do?
What do they do?
Wants to know like their role in the ecosystem.
Yeah.
Oh, well, they keep prairie dog populations in check. See this little guy right here? So there are, if you think about wolves and deer, right? There are a lot of deer and not as many wolves. And if you don't have wolves around, there become a lot of deer. And those deer can eat some of the shrubs and the grasses, and they can transmit diseases. So predators like wolves, like ferrets, keep prey populations in check. So there are few wolves, like there are few ferrets, and there are numerous deer, like there are numerous prairie dogs. And so black-footed ferrets are a predator. Those are an important piece of that food web that keeps all the balance of predator-prey cycles in check.
In Newfoundland, where I am, we don't have any predators, and so moose have taken off. It's a little bit bigger than a prairie dog, but they're everywhere. There's like a moose behind me right now, probably. So this is an issue all over the world. I'm really glad.
Yeah. And then like the more prey populations there are, there's higher probability for diseases, right? Like tick diseases are a big issue with moose. And so same thing, right? Like if there were more predators, maybe the tick populations wouldn't be so bad and impacting moose as badly.
Let's bring back the black-footed ferrets and every other predator. Fantastic message. Ms. Avila's class, thank you for that question. We're going to do a rapid-fire round, see if we can get everyone live again. YouTubers, check out this website. There's more to explore and discover there if you want answers to your questions. But we're going to head back to Ms. Adams' class. So Kersey Creek Elementary, Ms. Adams, you're good to go. Hey.
How long have you been doing this?
Ooh.
Oh my goodness. Forever, it seems. Let's see. Almost 30 years.
Wow. That's actually quite uncommon. When we have conservationists, typically it's like 5-10 years. So 30 years all on black-footed ferrets?
Black-footed ferrets, swift fox, bison,
Whoa.
condors, bears, wolves,
Best job ever.
insects. Yeah,
Holy.
but over 25 years with ferrets.
That's incredible, Kristy. Good for you. Wow. We're going to head back to Stevenson Elementary to wrap up with one final question. Our Florida class had to go, but a big thank you to them for sticking around. Come on in, Stevenson, and take us away.
How old do you have to be to work for you?
Yeah.
It's helpful if you can drive. So 16.
16. I can't believe you can drive at 16. It's been so long since I got my license. Jeez,
Right.
I feel very old, Kristy, very old. So there you go. A few more years for our Stevenson Elementary crew. Kristy, before we wrap up, I'm going to highlight again, blackfootedferret.org, worldwildlife.org for your breadth of work in general. And I really want to encourage our classes, check out our Wild Hope series for the rest of the series and Wild Hope TV, which will have a whole episode featuring Kristy over the summer, so lots more to explore there. It's the greatest conservation series I've ever seen. Before we wrap up and bring in our classes to say thank you and farewell, is there any final message you want to leave us with on ferrets and your amazing work?
Yeah, in other ways to get involved, you can give this presentation to your classrooms. You can go to one of the captive breeding facilities and learn about ferrets and see live ferrets in captivity as well. We can even arrange in some places to have a live ferret come to your school. So there are a lot of ways to get involved, but more than anything, I just want to thank you for being interested today and to hear that there are animals out there that need our help and that we have the tools to do that as long as we have the passion and the interest. And I am hoping that you will join me in our movement to save the masked bandit of the prairie. So thank you so much.
I am so in. I wish I was a little closer and could have a ferret come to my school, but what a cool opportunity. And a big thank you to our huge audience today. Check this out. If you want to share this program with your family and friends, it is on our YouTube channel and definitely to lots more opportunity to share the word of ferrets. Kristy, what we do to wrap up every broadcast, I'm going to bring in our live classes to say thank you and farewell. So Ms. Adams and our Stevenson Elementary crew, get ready, unmute your mics. If you're at home on YouTube and you just want to scream and yell in your class and annoy the principal, that's totally fine. We love that as well. But classes, thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful day.